what makes people fantastic and creative and have lots of layers is trauma and damage. And sometimes some of the worst things that have happened to us have ended up being this journey and turned us into the greatest things. And
Nikki, thank you so much. It is a joy to speak with you. It really, truly is.
oh.
I, I must say, I know you've been involved in a lot of projects, but I'm a huge Scrubs fan, so this is extra special for me.
Yay, bring it on. Every time I post a clip from Scrubs, people go nuts. People loved that show. I was just on a plane to Europe and there's a guy watching Scrubs. I couldn't help myself. I put my head over his shoulder and went, I did season 9. I never do that, but I was so stoked. So thank you.
Honestly, it's just such a fun show, and it continues to endure.
Yeah.
Um, and like you said, and Crescent City is such a fun project as well. It honestly, it really is. And Jaclyn's a great character. What excited you about the film?
She's a feisty piece of work. And Raja RJ, the director, has been a friend of mine for at least 16 or 17 years. I did one of my first movies that he was producing in LA, and he's always been trying to find something for me to be in, and this finally worked out. And I'm glad it was this one out of the ones we've spoken about in the past, because this is cool. This was a cool project, and Jaclyn's just a fun character to play. And then I'm surrounded, obviously, by these incredible, amazing actors in Hollywood. I mean, it's who are so good. Esai is personally a friend of mine, so getting to work with one of my good mates as well is always a treat. And it just around these heavy hitting sort of actors who are just ballers. I mean, it's sort of a no brainer, getting in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a great cast. Like you look at the lineup, and it really is phenomenal. And it looks like the two of you or not the two of you, not just you and Esai, but the whole cast is having a lot of fun on
Oh
set.
yeah, and the dynamic between Terrance and Esai is, I reckon they should have their own show. They were so good together. And then it's funny when Alex showed up. Alec is a boss. So and he is a boss in the show. We all shit ourselves, excuse my language. We're all like this. We're like it really threw us all into sort of exactly everyone, I don't know, develop their characters really quickly in the short period of time we had to film this. And you sort of slip into it straight away, and you just chuckle at how everybody falls into their character. It was so much fun. And so you're right, behind the scenes was a blast, and everyone's families were there, and it was really an ordeal. It was great.
Oh, that's so cool. These are the stories that are phenomenal to hear because when you have a team like this together, you want to hear that everybody just clicks because it feels that way. So that's great. Let's talk about Jaclyn for a little bit. What is it that you admire about her? She's a great character.
Yeah, she's lots of fun. I know she sort of comes off shifty every now and then. But she comes
Everyone
from
does. Everyone does.
That's the idea, right? But there are moments where I wish we'd had more time to sort of develop her character a little bit more. But you do see she comes from a lot of pain, and when women are in pain, or men, we tend to make poor decisions out of desperation. And I think she does her initial decisions for doing what she's doing and how she behaves come from this sort of a place of pain and needing to heal stuff within herself. But she does want to reveal things in the end, and she does have a conscience, and it starts to eat away at her and tap into her. And so she goes on quite a little journey throughout this, and she's also gets thrown into the mix with two very strong personalities. She's now not wanted to be part of the group. They try and kick her out, so she's got to constantly show up and prove herself. So yeah, there's Jaclyn goes on quite a journey throughout the whole thing. So yeah.
And one of the things about this film is everybody's struggling with their past and the choices that they've made along the way.
Yes.
Each everyone
which
everybody
is
seems to be burdened by it.
which is kind of life, whatever you're manifesting inside you and holding within you that you haven't dealt with, it tends to find its way to play out into your world. And everybody around you starts mirroring in that unconscious drama that you have going on. And so we all sort of, I think that's where RJ did a great job. And, in sort of showing that we all were mirrors for each other in different ways, and that sort of our past comes back and bites us on the ass in the end, if we don't deal with it.
Well, I'm glad you said that because there's a line in this film that particularly struck me, and I think it's Terrance's character, but I could be wrong. And it talks about the denial of your shadow. Oh, it's Esai, I believe. The denial of your shadow self. The more you ignore it, the bigger and badder it gets. And I was wondering what you thought about that line in particular, and whether or not you think it's true.
Yeah, it's true. I think whatever you obsess on, whether it be healthy or bad, or that sits in your subconscious, will grow, right? And whether you're thinking bad thoughts about it or good thoughts about it, it becomes that pendulum and it becomes bigger, which is what happens toward the end of this movie. Everyone is trying so hard to cover up their shit. Here I go swearing again. Sorry, it's the Aussie in me. We're all trying to cover up our stuff that it, comes into this massive big bang in the end and sort of unravels everybody. Some are just better at hiding it than others without giving away too much. So, yeah.
It feels like everybody in this film has got something to hide, so I don't think you're giving anything away there.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
But in that spirit as well, we talked about struggling with the effects of our choices, bringing our past with us. In your mind, how do you deal with these moments or these choices that we make, or because these characters are really wrestling with things they have done or are doing?
Well, I think it's, I think when bad things have happened to people in life, so many terrible guilt and shame and all those very low vibrating frequencies come with it. And like I said, they grow over time. So they can create really shitty and bad endings for people. They create really messy endings for people. So it's why it's so important to do self work, but also what makes people fantastic and creative and have lots of layers is trauma and damage. And sometimes some of the worst things that have happened to us have ended up being this journey and turned us into the greatest things. And damage can make you a great actor sometimes. And so all of it makes sense in the end. There's some quote that's like, you can only ever understand life backwards when you look backwards on it. So sometimes I look back and I'm like, I understand why all of that had to happen and take place. And at the time, it's so awful. So I think the three of these characters, regardless of where they're coming from, they're trying to deal with their trauma. They're trying to survive. And when we're in pain, we look for pleasure, right? No one wants to feel pain. We always choose to feel good over bad. So we make these decisions, whatever they are, and they, in the end, they all have consequences, good or bad.
Absolutely,
Not too
absolutely.
complicated.
No, that absolutely, I appreciate that. And I was thinking too, just practically, like you're playing an officer in this film, and right deal, and I know that it's based or at least inspired by true events. But in your mind, what, or not in your mind, I'm sorry, what did you have to do any specific training to take on the role of Jack?
Not really any training. I'd come straight, literally overnight, directly off another project, but I had been immersed in this. Physically wise, I do training on and off when I'm not working. So it was we were working in a lot of heat. It was really hot in Arkansas, and Esai and I have that sort of altercation, and we were gasping for air after it. Clearly, both hadn't prepped for it very well. Exhausted. And these movies, you got to understand, like, the beauty about these movies, we get 2 or 3 weeks max to make them. Once upon a time you had 3 months to make these kinds of movies. So things that you would really want to happen and hours to train, you don't get it. You got to come up with it pretty quickly. That in itself is its own art form. So it's not that it's stressful, but there's pressure on you. You don't have the days where you can do 2 scenes in a day and light it beautifully and find this. We're doing scenes like this all day long. So you got to bounce around and you sort of just got to mentally prep for working your ass off and thinking ahead and shooting the third last scene of the movie first. And I mean, the scene where there's Terrance and I on the stairs and we're having a cigarette, that scene.
Yeah.
It's halfway through the movie. We shot that the very first day, very first scene. So you got to understand, we hadn't even had time to know who our characters were and what we've emotionally been through. So you've got to it's challenging. Like it's really tough sometimes to sort of sit. We both sat there and started laughing. Right? Like, where do we? Okay, we had to just find this space and create a pretend space to think that we'd been through all that, and then we went and shot it all after. It's weird process always.
That's wild. I was thinking like, oh, what point of the trauma am I in? Where did? Yeah, exactly. That
Yeah.
must be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, Nikki, I appreciate that. I know we're out of time, but it's such a joy to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Of
And the
course,
film is
love. You got it. It's nice to meet you. Thank
nice to
you.
meet you too. Have a great day.
You too. Bye, love.
Bye bye.